Should be all set.
Okay, so today is Tuesday, August 11th, 2020. And we have a quorum in this meeting, myself, Freeman Zauser, Susan Swed, and Renee Grover. And really on our agenda, do we have any minutes from the last meeting, Max?
I believe I sent that last time when I sent out the
Notice?
yes. Yes, there were minutes for July 28th.
And you sent that when?
Sent that when I sent the
Oh, sorry, July 28th minutes. Got it.
Yep.
So I don't know if anyone's had any comments or changes. That was the meeting in which we had Mike Thayer and Renee especially discussing environmental issues or potential issues. So I have no changes. I don't know about anybody else.
I'm fine.
And I wasn't there, so I can't really
Okay.
say.
And Renee?
I'm good.
Okay, so motion to approve the minutes.
So moved.
I second that.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, so the next item is, I guess this is under new business, Max. Is that right? There really is no old business, or
right.
maybe this is old business, whatever. Is Freeman had presented a draft ordinance, or it's not really an ordinance, but it's really a draft of proposals to present to the select board. And I don't know if you all had an opportunity to read through this or had any changes or questions. I did, Freeman. Don't understand the general section, which is at the top of my second page.
They were items I took from one of the other towns.
Mhm.
And I'm not saying they should or shouldn't be in, but this is what they had on their menu.
But it doesn't mean anything to me in terms of, for example, odor management. Are there parameters for odor management, or is it just something that they want to think about, or what?
As a performance standard, I think your question is excellent. I'm not sure how you would actually translate that into something that's actionable. Max, given the performance standards for the town in other ways, do you think it's doable or not?
The odor control?
Like developing performance standards, is Saran's suggesting, that actually are actionable, that are measurable.
Well, I know for items like smoke, odor, debris, a few of these are in the general performance standards already. So they would be, and Freeman, we've been talking about this in the land use ordinance. We've been kind of removing the redundant specific standards. So unless they're very more restrictive or have a specific case to it, I wouldn't include them. But
That makes good sense then. So starting from the top, tell me some of these may stay, but tell me which ones you want to strike.
what I would strike, the exterior of display of marijuana or paraphernalia is something that either could be stricken, or we reference the state language, as in we just take what the state language says and we put it there. Because I assume this is talking about the signage, correct?
Right. Yes.
So we could just so it could either be removed because the state language exists already, or because a sign has to come from Stan Waltz, or we can just take what the state language has now and we put it in instead. Those are the three options I have for it.
On land use in, do we have, are there regulations about lit signs? Anything about having a lighted sign in front of your house? Size of the sign?
There are standards regarding when you're saying lit signs, do you mean like a light shining at it, or do you mean an interior one with like bulbs doing like what the town has right out front?
Either one.
So there are performance standards for lighting. Pretty much any light, let me find the exact words. This can be found on 4.6 of the land use ordinance. But essentially what the language is saying is it can't be so bright that it's going to disturb the neighbors, and it can't be positioned in a way to impair the vision of motorists and pedestrians. So, for example, if you're going to have a light illuminating on a sign, it has to either be pointed at the sign so that you see the sign, but you don't see the bulb itself, or it's planted in the ground so you have the light just shining up and sort of that beam area right there. And then for signs, that's a whole different section. That's could be found in 413 is where the illumination part is. But it has the following: no sign shall be illuminated while flashing, moving, or animated type lights, except those which offer essential services to the public, such as date, time, temperature, and weather conditions. So the town, for example, displays the sign, displays the times. It displays some town meeting information that has to be publicly notified, as well as some local offerings like shellfish licenses that are happening right now. That's put out there because it's important for the local industry. But then there are the there are three more parts to that illumination. In rural and residential districts, all illuminated signs shall be turned off between the hours of 10 p.m. and 6 a.m. Freestanding signs shall be lit from above by full cut fixtures, downlighted. So that's saying if you do have a business that does use the illumination and you live in one of those two districts, which is pretty much the north half, which is pretty much north of Route 1, as well as pretty much any property that's along 32 or 220 going downwards. If you do have a business in those areas, you can't have the light shining on that sign from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. That's what it's saying. And then interior lit signs must utilize opaque backgrounds for lettering and logos. And then lastly, there shall be no interior lit signs outside of the Route 1 commercial A and B districts. So once you're outside of Route 1, you can't use the type of sign that the town office offer. Yeah. So we don't have like a casino in the downtown or something. Those are the items regarding lighting and signs. If that answered it all.
Yeah. So in other words, on signage, it has to not only conform to home occupation ordinances, it also has to conform to signage ordinances in the town.
Correct. If anyone wants a sign, they do have to come to Stan Waltz.
So this says here under signage on page 2, conforms to home occupation ordinances. But it should be not just that. Unless there's a specific in our home occupation ordinance about signage that's more restrictive.
On page 2, which, oh wait, maybe it's on the other side. I'm sorry, where are you seeing the home occupations?
I'm looking under Freeman's draft.
Oh, Freeman's draft. I'm sorry. I thought we were talking about the ordinance.
Freeman's draft has, the third to the last item says signage.
Right, I see it. I see it now. One sign that identifies the business, but which is not an advertisement, and which
And which conforms to home occupation ordinances.
so
So
I
are home occupation ordinances more restrictive on signage than the land use on signage?
no well, a home occupation is supposed to be about being sort of is supposed to be fitting with the neighborhood. So it's supposed to be a sign that you could drive by and you don't really think too much of it. You don't do a double take type thing, if that makes sense. Like it's kind of like that interior lit sign that I'm just talking about right there. There are so many home occupation businesses in town. Some people who are doing some car repairs. Some people who one person who's doing a barber shop. They have the basic little wooden sign outside saying, "Here's my shop. Here's my store." But none of them have like a sign like the town out front. I can find the exact language for a home occupation, but I don't think there's any. I'm trying to think what the exact language was for home occupation or signage. One externally lit sign no larger than 6 square feet may be erected on the premises. That's what the home occupation says.
So it's more restrictive.
Yes.
There we go. So it should stay the way it is,
Okay.
right? Does everybody agree?
Yeah.
Yes.
But just going through the rest of the general items, smoke, odor, debris, etc. controls, that would fall under nuisance control. So if we want to make it more restrictive, we can, but that with odor management, I feel, is there a reason that those two are separate under general?
No.
Okay. So
I wouldn't know unless there's something special to determine what the parameters are of odors
I think that's
coming from a processing operation or whatever.
Well, I can try and find. I have to find the wording in the ordinance because I don't get to it too much, but it is a state item as well, so that neighbors aren't affected by the on-site impact. Like I've had some people come by and say, "Oh, you can smell a certain business from this distance," and so Stan and I have to go out and say whether or not we can smell that business from there. Yeah.
It's up to somebody's nose. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't sound very specific to me.
But I mean, we could certainly have odor in there. As I say, we can just take what the state has for nuisance control and just put that same language in there. And then operational plan for proper disposal of marijuana and related products. That would be, we do have 2 items. We have a refuse disposal. Applicant shall provide disposal of all solid and liquid waste on a timely basis and in the manner provided for by federal and state law, and this ordinance will not cause an unreasonable burden on the ability of the municipality to dispose of solid waste.
Those all sound good. So is there, but it would also be good if the licensee did have a plan for disposal.
The disposal of what? Leaves, dirt, and stock?
Whatever you thrown out.
Well, that's about it.
I mean, the only other thing we do have in here is for storage of materials, and that includes dumpsters and large collection receptacles for trash and waste.
Mm.
That has to say that has to be screened properly and stored in a manner so that insects, rats, or vermin don't interfere with it. I'm not saying that's something for this specifically. I'm saying that that's what we have in the ordinance for all businesses for the general performance standards.
So does this, am I missing something in the draft? Is there something in the draft that's going to say that you're gonna have to meet all the other performance standards of the town?
I mean, that could just be an item in the general performance, in the general section, just stating regulations or the standards of this ordinance are applicable to the general performance standards of the land use ordinance, if that's what we're aiming for.
Well, I would think so, and where it's more restrictive, whichever one applies.
Right.
Yeah.
If you want to have, and that can be some language in there, unless specified in this ordinance, standards are default to the general performance standards of the land use ordinance. That's just some language that we'd have to specify. And then, what was the other one? Quiet enjoyment?
Hmm.
What's that supposed to refer to?
I'm not sure if it's for the operation of the business or the neighbors.
Right.
What it means, what I thought it meant was, and it's on land use, is that whatever you do has to not interfere with the quiet enjoyment of the abutting neighbors.
Yeah. So
So you might want to add that in.
it could just say or not change the. Let me find the wording for the home occupation, just so I'm not butchering the language. My goodness, I'm just trying to find one thing. Not alter the residential character of the structure or change the character of the lot. Nope, that's not it. I'm sorry. Oh, and home occupation also has nuisance control standard as well. Incidental use. I'm sorry, I'm trying to find it right. Not generating enough traffic. I'm sorry, I'll find the exact language. I don't want to hold this up too long.
Okay. So maybe we want to go back then to like the beginning to, I didn't have a problem with life safety. I didn't know if anybody else did. But under environmental, you need to have a number of footage, you need some footage setback from rivers, great ponds, etc. I don't know what that would be. What is acceptable?
I guess this
And
depends. Talking.
I wonder if it needs to also say from a resource protection area, since we have designated resource protection areas in the town.
You could, well, this depends if we're talking septics, brand new buildings, or a building being changed to use, because I would imagine for rivers, great ponds, that would already be in the shoreline zone. So we can just say the shoreline zone. Setback from, yeah, the same would be for a resource protection. I mean, for that area, I don't think there's really much allowed in there. What does the setback X from rivers, great ponds, etc.? Is that just saying, is that outdoor growing or indoor growing, or is that just like, is that just the operation in general?
I took it to mean the operation in general.
Should we just say setbacks meet all shoreland ordinance requirements?
Yeah, I mean, it's very simple item, I'd say. And I mean, I assume this is more of what we're at with recommendations. This isn't going to be something that we're seeking for November approval or anything tonight, right? This is just the first draft to start writing it out, correct?
Well, I don't understand. Actually, I was going to ask you that, Max. I thought, did we, if it's not set for November approval, then what happens? Then it goes into June?
It would go in, right. This wouldn't be an issue until, this wouldn't get a town approval until June.
Okay,
But
And-
I don't want to rush us.
nope. But I had thought, and maybe incorrectly, that we were going to discuss this draft and that then you were going to fold this into some language that would be presented to the select board. Or were you thinking this was going to be presented to the select board?
That's something I wanted to have clarified, because
There we
I
go.
can take this and I can write something for
Uh-huh.
for our next meeting
Yep.
here, or we can take the bullet points as is, show it to the select board and say, these are the recommendations we're making. Do you want us to start writing an ordinance for this? Like, I didn't know what the process we were thinking for this was.
I wasn't clear on it either.
Usually what I'm used to is we'll have this and then I'll write something up and we can talk about the more fleshed out version at the next marijuana committee meeting,
Mm-hmm,
just to make sure I have the expected language correct.
mm-hmm,
And that would probably put us in September.
mm-hmm.
It would be close to put it on the November ballot though.
Right, yep. That's okay. I get, as far as I know, unless you ask, unless you hear otherwise.
Right.
Does that sound reasonable to the rest of you?
But I don't want us to rush anything because November is coming. I don't want to rush this.
Okay,
There's already a few items that are going to be on the November ballot. And I remember one problem that people had was just how many things they were answering, like in July with
Yep.
the budgets and all that. And there was a lot that people didn't want to really go through with it. I already know.
But if this doesn't come up again until then, there's going to be another ballot with all that budget stuff, right? Or is it a 2-year budget?
This would be put on the June one, and it would be the town budget at least, yes. But I'm just saying, we don't have to rush it. There is no problem with having this in June for next year. I'm just stating that.
well, let's try
go
to,
through this.
why don't we try to get it on the November ballot? I mean,
Okay.
what's the cutoff date to putting something on the ballot?
The select board would need to have everything. That was weird. Select board would approves the warrant. I believe it'll be September 22nd because,
Oh.
yeah. So we do have a meeting on the 8th before that. That's why I'm saying, you know,
It
I'll-
could happen.
I'll have something typed up, but unless I do a very good job for that first draft, it might not happen.
So that's the day after Labor Day. Okay. Well,
But-
let's just keep going on here.
Let's go.
And maybe you will have a great draft. Maybe you could actually circulate it way ahead of time so that we could
Take a look at it.
take a look at it and think about it harder. What about the security section? The cameras, like, is there a limitation or a requirement of you know, the number of cameras, or you have to have cameras that show all entrances and exits and windows, or how does that work?
Renee, I think you mentioned there was something about having at least, was it just one camera?
It is on any entrance, but usually there's only one entrance to a grow facility. There's rarely more than one. And it is required by the state to have a central alarm system that rings into a 24/7 alarm company. Exterior lighting is a state requirement. I'm not sure about the recordings. Yes, especially if like Highbrow and myself, we are required to have recordings of our offices. And
What do you mean by that? Recordings of everything that goes on all day long? What do you mean?
yeah, of every time there's a patient in there, yes. Everything is recorded.
Are the cameras on the entrances, are they of the exterior or the interior of the property?
Exterior.
So the state requires a recording of every interaction you have with every client?
Yep.
And how long do you have to keep those?
I believe we have to keep them on record for at least 30 days. So like mine is motion activated, so I'm not recording nothing for hours at a time. So it just comes on when we enter,
Mm-hmm.
and then it goes off after we leave.
And do you know what the state's trying to gather by having those recordings?
The state is just making sure that there's no problems with patient caregiver interactions.
I guess I'm thinking about HIPAA here. Is this all come under HIPAA?
Yeah, but the people that review the tapes, if they need to be reviewed, are HIPAA compliant. There's only so many people that can review these tapes. They have to be from the Office of Marijuana Policy or.
Is this the same, this is the same one that goes on the exterior camera, or is this a separate camera?
They're basically all tied together, so.
So you're saying there's another camera that's actually inside the facility that's,
Yeah.
so how many cameras do you have in your facility, for example?
6.
You have 6 cameras. How many cameras would a normal non-retail medical caregiver have?
I don't believe they just need to have them in their grow facility.
And what about their entrance?
At their entrance.
So just one. And do they, you say the grow facility, do they need to have one where it's actually growing as well, or just for the entrance?
No, just the
Just for,
entrance.
just the entrance.
So they don't need to have one where they have interaction with a client or patient?
No.
But you do?
Yes, because I actually have an office off premise.
And how many hours are they required, a normal medical caregiver, how many hours would they be required to keep their recording for?
For their entrance to their grow building?
Yes.
I believe it's only 72 hours.
Okay.
Does this make sense to you guys? It doesn't to me.
Why
Not
doesn't
really.
it make sense?
I understand it for the privacy reasons where, I mean, if there's only one entrance, you need the one camera just to see who's going in and out of that entrance.
I was thinking about the length of time that you keep the recordings. Why is one 30 days and the other 72 hours? And then I was thinking, why is
Because basically it's a security measure. You only have a camera on your entrance to make sure nobody's breaking in. You don't usually meet your patients in your grow facility. There's too much contamination with too many people going in and out. So no decent caregiver would do that.
But what I am curious about is for this proposed ordinance, it says security recordings for 72 hours. Does that mean once that 72 hours is passed, that home caregiver can get rid of that recording, or you
Yeah.
See, it requires a huge server to keep these recordings. I had to do it at my office, on and on and on. I had to keep a couple of years. So it's hugely different for 30 days to keep all these recordings for that amount of time. I guess I'm trying to get at, what is it that the state is trying to, you said to make sure you treat your clients well or something like that?
No, that's not exactly what I said.
Okay,
I
what did
said
you
that
say?
if there is a problem with a patient or a caregiver, the state can require a copy of your video.
And what kind of problem do they come up with?
I have no
What
idea
would you-
because I've never heard of one.
Yeah.
Out of the 50 some odd people that I know that grow and have businesses and offices, not one has ever had a problem.
Renee, yeah, I need some education. I had thought, and I could be wrong, that the medical marijuana caregiver would have patients coming in their front door, but their grow facility might be in their basement or a back room. Where would a normal non-retail medical marijuana caregiver grow their product?
I have no idea. Probably in a garage or a barn.
They might even buy it, right? Buy it
Exactly.
wholesale.
They might be non-growing caregivers. I'm not sure. And I do not believe you're required to have a recording if you are meeting patients in your own home or, I mean, I meet patients all over the place, not just at my office. I'm not going to record them the whole time that I'm meeting somebody at like Hannaford or.
Right.
So the camera, just I understand. So the camera you're saying is in the grow facility. So if you had nothing growing, you wouldn't need to have a camera that monitored who came in and out of your property. Is that what you're
If you're
saying?
not growing, no. Exactly. If your grow isn't in an operation, then there's no need for the camera. But if you're growing, yeah, your camera should be in operation.
Well, I guess what I don't understand is someone at the state level, and probably more than one person, must have thought that there was enough of a problem, a potential problem, to either the caregiver or the patient, that there would need to be, in your situation, Renee, a camera with recordings going for 30 days. Even though you
Mhm.
say you have no idea what a problem would be.
Well, the camera.
Well, I mean, it's with any type of business. I mean, it's not just because it's marijuana. I mean, it's just like I have recordings at my convenience store.
Mhm.
And I keep those for 30 days in case there's a problem. But I believe that the state incorporated this when this first started in case there was a problem. And in the, 7-8 years that medical marijuana has been in the state of Maine, I have not once heard of any of my friends or my business associates or people that I know through medical marijuana have ever had to pull their tapes because they had a problem with a patient. Or the state has requested camera footage from anybody's storefront, grow, or office.
Or has a patient had a problem with a provider?
Nope, I have not heard of one.
I can just check with the Office of Marijuana Policy and see why that was in there and if they've had any cases. I can just see if, I mean, I don't know how far that'll go, but I can just see what was the logic behind that rule. Just because if Renee doesn't have an example right now, I doubt any of us have one. So I can just check with the state.
Okay,
I've had more problems at my convenience store in the last 6 months that I've owned it than the, 6 years I've been a caregiver with my patients.
well, although, in our last meeting, we did talk very tangentially about how there are good caregivers and there are bad caregivers. And we talked about, I think we talked about, did you want to have, actually, I think you said, Renee, that in the last meeting that you had had an inspection and you even had someone whomever was inspecting at the state level, I believe, do some things that didn't have to be done, but you went the extra mile. There probably are other people who would do the bare minimum. If they even had to do that, they would try to do less. And so maybe this is a reason why maybe that's why they are saying, keep everything for 30 days in case a
And
patient.
I may be wrong about the 30 days. I'm not sure. It's not something that I look into regularly because
Yep.
it's never been an issue. My inspector didn't even ask,
Right. But I guess what I'm saying is maybe for the safety of patients, perhaps that's another reason why it's not a bad idea to keep tapes for 30 days.
Could be, but I'm not really sure what a tape would show. You know, and when I say there are, I think there's caregivers on different levels, I guess saying a bad caregiver is kind of a wrong term. There are caregivers who do the basic minimums, which doesn't make them bad people or that they're not, following the rules. It's just there are some of us that do go above and beyond what we need to do because, like, my clientele is a lot different than, a lot of places just because I have an older population that comes to me because I really am more on the medical CBD tinctures solves spectrum of caregiving, but if they have a card, I can't question that. But there's other caregivers that may not use, everything that I use in their grow rooms, but that doesn't make them bad caregivers. You know what I'm saying? It's just,
Right.
I completely make sure that everything that I use is organic. Other people may be using a line of nutrients that is organic, but it's not certified organic. That doesn't make them bad caregivers. They just prefer to use that. There's other caregivers that they don't use CO2. I do use CO2 on my plants. I spray my plants weekly with an organic foliar mist. A lot of people don't, it's all added expenses. It depends on, what quality of product you want to produce. They still may be growing good quality products, but mine's going to come out a little bit differently because I've gone a little bit above and beyond, but that doesn't make them bad caregivers. Everybody does everything differently,
Right.
Some of my good friends that have been growing just as long as me, they do things completely different, just because they were taught that way or, they've read up on it. There are some people that have switched to LED. I don't use LEDs. There's just a lot of things. It doesn't make them bad caregivers. It's just maybe they don't have the finances to, put more into their plants or whatever. I get mine tested. All of my oil and stuff that I do have produced gets tested for, potency because I want to produce. I'm not making the stuff in my own home. I'm, I want to
Now,
make sure
does
that
that
my
get-
patient
Does that get tested in state or out of state?
in state.
Okay. So there are places in state to get it tested.
Oh, definitely. 2 places
Okay.
in Portland. I believe there's a new one in Rumford. Yeah.
Okay. One quick aside question. Does the state require you to keep a backup of these recordings?
I'm not sure exactly what the extent is. Like, I think I couldn't tell you right now. I'd have to look it up in the manual.
So this is a state issued manual?
Yeah, it's the Medical Marijuana Bible issued by the
Okay.
state of Maine.
Okay.
Which every caregiver has a copy of.
On parking, I just had a question that I wanted to be reminded of. Do we have isn't there a square footage limitation on the area for growing? Did we lose Max? Or Renee?
About that, sorry
No,
about
I'm right here.
I had,
What was the question?
Is there a square footage limitation on the size of the growing area?
is this for medical or this is for medical, right?
Yes,
Renee, correct me if I'm wrong. I think it was more for the number of plants you're growing, correct?
Yeah, we are guided by the number of plants that we grow, not the square footage.
and so how many plants is the limitation?
I believe the maximum is 36.
So how many employees could you have? We don't have a limitation on employees, right?
The
Down.
state, I think, says you can have employees as long as there's also licensed caregivers. Am I correct, Renee?
Nope. They do not have to be licensed caregivers. They do have to be over the age of 21. You do have to fill out an application for the state to approve and pay for, I think it's like, $75 to have an employee, but they do not have to be another caregiver.
Yeah.
And I believe the state just changed it. You were allowed to have one, and now you can have unlimited.
Employees.
Right.
I'm just thinking about the parking spaces.
I was thinking about the lack of local control anymore. Unlimited employees.
I think because you guys have no idea anything about growing marijuana, you know, if you only have 36 plants, you don't need more than one employee.
Oh, no, I'm sure you
Well, then
don't.
Then why not, so we could limit it to one employee.
I
don't think you guys are going to trump the state.
was about to say, saying that you can only have a certain number, a local municipality saying you can only have a certain number of employees, that's the dangerous area we're going into right there. I'm just saying, like, you could proceed. It's
well,
just, I don't know how that's gonna go.
If by executive order, we were just not required to have residency anymore in the state, you're now going to have big companies coming in. Not necessarily Waldeboro,
For home caregivers or for
growing marijuana.
I'm sorry, what was that?
Saran, am I wrong? I thought we discussed this, that the
Yeah.
governor by executive order got rid of all residency requirements for growing marijuana.
medical or recreational?
I couldn't tell you which.
I think it was
Well, it's got
recreational.
to be recreational.
Recreational.
Because if it's recreation, then that's not even our category right now.
Well, that's not the point that Susan's trying to make. It's that
Thank you.
there was an executive order that threw out the residential requirements. So now we no longer have residential requirements. Here's another change go from 1 employee to unlimited number of employees. So where
Right.
is this going in the state? At the state level, as opposed to the town of Waldeboro on medical? Max doesn't understand what I'm saying.
Can't see Max.
Oh.
What was he, rolling his eyes?
No,
No,
no, he's
I guess
thinking-
I'm still confused.
Yeah, he's confused, yeah.
Because we're saying an outside state business can come in and hire people. That's what I'm getting from this.
No, it's more in general. Where is the whole medical, or where is the whole marijuana issue going in Maine? When it first passed, it was all about, this is going to be a cottage industry for Maine residents to be able to supplement their incomes.
Mhm.
And now that is by the by in the last 3 months.
That's
So
right,
tobacco
because
companies-
recreational
Yeah,
was approved by the voters of Maine. So guess
Right.
what?
Yeah.
Anybody can come to Maine, but they also have to apply for a recreational license. They have to abide by the rules of the recreational. There's another whole Bible that's 3 times the size of the medical marijuana Bible issued by the state to abide by the rules for recreational. So just because it's marijuana, you can't, it's just like any company that wants to come to Maine and start a business.
I guess I'm confused what this has to do with restricting employment.
okay,
It doesn't.
it doesn't. They get
Don't
it.
worry about it, Max.
Okay.
Just forget it.
I just got a notice that I have a low battery on my phone.
And I was thinking we're really pretty much done with this, except that Max has to write something further for us to see for our next meeting, which is September 8th.
I will start writing that up then.
So is it at noon time on the 8th? And Renee, is that the best time for you?
Yes, and I'm sorry I forgot today.
It's okay.
And also just getting back to what we're actually discussing.
Yeah.
The only thing that I do not really care for on Freeman's draft, I think the wording needs to be changed for that medical marijuanas have to grow inside.
The growing, cultivating, and processing all has to be inside under general.
Right.
I think you got that from another town, right, Freeman? Or
Yeah.
town?
But also, was that from like a more city urban area? If I own 100 acres and my nearest neighbor's, a mile away, then I guess I should be able to grow outside if I want to, as long as I'm following the state guidelines for fencing and.
Max, can this be done by zone? So for example, rural and some places have it and some don't, or how would you advise us?
It can certainly be. You can certainly say it can't be done in zone A or B, as long as we just make it so that it's not impossible for someone to move to Waldeboro and do this, and that we're still respecting grandfathered businesses as well. For example, if we say it's allowed everywhere except, if we're saying it's allowed in all but the shoreland zones, then you just can't be 250 feet from the water or a wetland. But if we're saying that you can only be a home caregiver, a medical home caregiver in an industrial zone, well, one is pretty much filled up and it's privately owned by one person, and the other is the Sylvania plant, which doesn't allow residential use, so you can't be a home caregiver there. which
We're
makes it-
trying to go with what Renee's saying. Could you say that that second bullet point would apply, let's say, in the village, the historic village, you know, and things like that, but it wouldn't apply in rural or places with, and effectively that have the land? Question.
Well, I guess if it's, yeah, I don't know. I don't see where it's a problem. What's wrong with restricting the growing to indoors, cultivating and processing? Why do you have to do it outdoors?
Because what if I want to?
Well, why?
Why not?
Well,
Cheaper.
are you gonna do it in February?
It's seasonal, so there's only about 6 months to worry about. Okay,
And
there is a great expense to being an indoor medical marijuana caregiver. A lot of people can't afford to do that, especially startups, you know. So who are we to say that, no, you can't grow outside, you know? I mean, growing outside is far less, not that there's an environmental impact on growing inside, but for people who can't afford the electricity, or they don't have a facility, they don't have a building to put it in, it's safer to grow outside than it is indoors. So I just
Why
don't
is it
believe
safer outside? Why would,
Well, you don't have,
I'm
you
sorry if
know,
it was a silly question.
you don't have a 400 amp service connected to a building with,
Yeah.
you know, lots of
Are you
power going.
are you at all concerned with anybody coming along and stealing your product?
Well, then you have cameras and you do what you can, you know. I mean, it happens. If your grow is supposed to be in a fenced in area, it's not supposed to be, you know, it has to be it can't be seen. I don't grow outside, so it has to be in a locked fence, I believe. And you know, anybody who's growing is going to have cameras. They don't want to lose their product. It takes a lot of work to grow marijuana, so it's not like people just throw their plants out and just, you know, say a prayer.
Well, so there's an expense of having to put up a big fence as opposed to having to get lights and do the things you have to do inside.
A fence is a lot cheaper than growing inside.
So if you're talking about expenses, you know, we haven't even touched on liability insurance. And that's an expense right there. I mean, here you are, here these caregivers are treating people medically. If you're a doctor, you have to
We are
have.
not treating people medically. We are providing medicine to patients who have already been to a doctor and have been approved for a card.
So it's similar then to a pharmacy. Is that what it is?
Yes, we dispense medication that we grow.
And so pharmacies also have liability insurance in case they screw up.
What kind of
Give you too
liability
much
insurance do you
of
want
one.
us to carry?
Well, something that would protect the clients.
Well, the clients are coming to us. It's not like they're forced to come to us.
But if you don't have any assets and they're trusting in you to provide them with a proper product and a safe product, you should have some liability there if you don't. Which is another reason why you should have a camera going for 30 days, I would think.
I can just jump in and
Yep.
ask for the liability insurance. Was
Mhm.
that something that was in one of the other towns that were requiring it for a home caregiver? Or was that something added in because of some other businesses in town that we do require that for?
Well, certainly there are other businesses that are required to have liability insurance,
Yes.
or else you don't have a license. If you can't
Right.
maintain a license.
But I'm saying for this draft where it says require X liability insurance, I'm wondering if that was something because of another town did something similar to that, or if this was just something.
I don't remember. I don't remember. I know I've had discussions about it with other people at the town level. But I don't remember if it was in one of the other cities or towns.
And
I
for
think we
just
lost Did we lose Susan?
No, no, you're looking at the ceiling. I got
Oh.
sick of holding it.
and then and just quickly back to the indoor cultivation and
Oh,
growth.
yeah.
So was that whole topic about growing indoor for certain zones and you can do outdoor growing for certain zones, or what was the restriction we were talking about with zoning for that one?
I think that's what Freeman was suggesting. Is that right, Freeman?
Yes.
I mean, if you certainly want to say a rural area can do outdoor growing, you can certainly do that. The only thing I would say on that is to make sure, I mean, I don't know how the odor management and, I mean, screening is pretty straightforward on that one, but
That's funny. I was just gonna say, Renee gave the example of, well, if you have 100 acres, what's the problem? Maybe there probably isn't a problem with 100 acres, but what if you have a 1/4 acre lot, an old grandfathered 1/4 acre lot in a
right,
rural area? That is gonna be a problem, or
right.
it could be.
And that's the only thing I would say on the outdoor growing, because that is the only issue I've had people say at all with
Mhm.
growing, whether it's someone here at town or someone at an MMA conference saying this is the big problem I've had with marijuana. It is mostly an odor issue, because Renee's right. People don't want to lose this product, so they'll take care of it. They'll put up a fence so that they'll put up some cameras if they have to, so that if someone wants to steal it, essentially, then they're going to have stuff ready so that it's not going to be stolen. And then buffering and screening, that's all something that's already in the ordinance already. So it's really just the odor. That's the only thing I can think of for a reason why not to have it outdoors, because it could be on this massive plot of land where, it's well screened, it's out of the middle of nowhere, so no one's going to smell it for miles. But you're right, there could be this one person who wants to do just a homegrown backyard in the village, essentially, and that's going to tip everyone off. But that's something I can look into more about odor management. If we want to have outdoor growing in rural Waldoboro. Is that what, and some other districts, but I assume that wouldn't go over well saying you can do outdoor growing in the residential and village areas because of how that's so tight and close together. Renee, your thoughts on that?
Well, my thoughts on limiting the outdoor growing. Of course, you have to take into consideration that if you are a patient, you can grow your own plants and you can grow your own recreational plants. But 6 plants versus 36 plants is a big difference. And odor control. Yeah, I mean, there's going to be some odor from marijuana, but it's no different than going by, Moody's or Dunkin' or any place that cooks food. So we have to be very careful on, cracking down on marijuana odor when, there's a lot of places that do create odor in town. It's just something that people that don't care for marijuana, I guess, are just going to have to deal with. I mean, I'm not really sure, the odor situation, how much you're going to be able to control that. Like, I mean, I know a lot of people have charcoal filters in their buildings to, cut down on the smell. You do the best you can, but of course you're going to smell it, especially on hot, humid days. But it's kind of one of those things that kind of comes with the territory. I don't know how much we can try to control the odor of marijuana, except by incorporating outside caregiver grows versus your own individual use grows. You know, I'm just thinking like, you know, if a caregiver has a 36 plant limit and they decide to grow downtown in the village, that's probably going to cause a problem, you know?
Right.
So
But, oh, go ahead.
I just think we need some parameters, Max. I mean, we have like, I think it's lumens, number of lumens on the lights. Doesn't matter where you are in Waldoboro. If you've got some factory or a business of some kind, your lights can only be a certain number of lumens. They can't be facing up towards the sky because we're worried about seeing the stars at night. And so there must be some parameters for odor somewhere. Maybe another town has not come across it, but somebody has somewhere.
Yeah, there is likely a town that has done that.
So,
Oh, I'm sure, like, you know, you could look at some of the other cities. I mean, look at Augusta or Lewiston or Auburn or Portland, or I'm sure that there are parameters in place that people cannot grow in downtown Portland, you know. But it's Waldoboro. You have to, you know, go with the town that you live in, and this is exactly what we're doing. I don't believe that you should be able to limit people to just medically growing inside if, you know, they have the means, you know, I mean, I think that one I just don't agree with, to limiting everybody to growing inside.
What I was getting at with the outdoor, and hopefully a town does have this type of solution, is something to possibly address outdoor, like just the odor for outdoor growers. That's the only thing. I mean, it would be great if there is one out there so that we can, if it's a very inexpensive method of doing it, like just having, I don't know, just some type of other plant somewhere around it just to kill the smell. I don't know what it would be exactly, but just some type of method to address outdoor odor. Because if that can be found, we can put it in there, and I think everyone would be fine at that point, I hope. If not, then it comes down to what this committee wants to make for a suggestion to the select board, really.
well, I guess I would say see what you can find, and
Mhm.
maybe the rest of us can do the same between now and September. And if you find anything before then, let us all know.
All right.
Does anybody have anything else?
No,
Renee, Freeman,
All set.
all set? Good.
I was just looking really quickly. And we're going to have to look into the liability insurance. I don't think you can enforce that unless somebody has an active, like, storefront.
Well, usually to get a license for other things, I don't know about this, but you need to have a liability and assurance. You need to, in order to get a license, you have to have a liability policy in place. You actually provide the declarations page to the licensor. Right, Susan?
you're right.
Yep.
Could I make a suggestion on this? Whether or not we should have it, there is a liability, because even though there's a prescription, just like a pharmacy, as you said, the person's providing product they've grown, they're suggesting it has certain potency. It may have more potency than is safe. They may have less potency. So there are product issues, and even how the prescription's filled, just like in a pharmacy. So there is liability because you're providing this product. And in fact, maybe more, because the pharmacist is simply providing something from Pfizer or AstraZeneca or Glaxo they can hide behind. But here you're actually providing a product that you're growing in many cases and cultivating and then processing yourself.
I can,
Right.
I'm going to, I mean, I assume I'm writing this up. So, and then when I do present it next month, we're going to go through it and make some suggested changes regardless.
Mhm.
So this discussion isn't really over. I'm
No.
going to plug in a number and we're likely, it could go down. It could be removed entirely. And then I'll look and see what other towns have done on liability insurance, because I don't know what they've done for this category really, especially since we're talking about home caregivers and not the stores or cultivation only businesses. So that's why I'm also sort of not full in the idea just yet. But again, I'll write something up.
Okay, I need to leave. You all can continue if you want, or we can adjourn.
I move that we adjourn.
I second that.
All right. Okay, so we'll see everybody on September 5th, and hopefully we'll,
I'm voting
Eighth?
yes.
September 8th.
okay, September 8th, sorry.
That was a trick question.
It
Okay.
was, yeah, thanks.